So, about Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game. Alright, I might as well talk about this game since nobody's watching anyways. Screw it. I'm going to try to wrap this up kind of quickly, mainly with pros and cons, but I'm going to throw in a little bit more commentary than that, as I do, and then we'll just take off from there. So, I think I'll start with the cons, mostly, so that the ending of the video doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth, and I don't get a bunch of angry flack from, well, probably no one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure no one cares. So, here we go. I'm upset about a few different things regarding this game, and I'm comparing it to a lot of other retro games, by the way, specifically 2D games in general. And not just beat 'em ups. So old school games like Double Dragon are on the table, yes, but then so are like old NES games or SNES games like Super Metroid for my comparison's sake. Because this game has the good fortune to be able to look back at those old games and then use modern technology to blow my mind with it. This game kind of forgot to do that. So, first of all, these characters don't really have any good ways to combat multiple foes at the same time. This is, well, a problem. You will either be losing health and getting comboed whether you like it or not, or you will only be able to hit an enemy like one time and then jump away and hope you don't get chased down by these guys and then get comboed anyway. Either way, that's no fun, and I wish I could simply see the guys coming, which I obviously can, and then do an AoE attack that's better than the garbage they give me. Ugh. Anyways, I also hate the fact that you can throw things off the walls, even the invisible ones, that are created as progression barriers, and they can bounce back and hit your friends and deal actual damage, or bounce back and hit yourself with the item that you just threw. You can potentially kill yourself with this mechanic, or kill your friends if you're playing 2-player or more. I hate that. That sucks. I wish it was removed. Next, I hate that if you fall, you could randomly get dogpiled. Actually, scratch that. I just hate how incredibly long you end up laying on the ground in general after someone knocks you down. There is no reason for that, and the dogpile just adds insult to injury in what is already, in my opinion, a bad decision to make my character lay there for so long. That could have been mopped up, in my opinion, but they do what they do. Anyway, the next point I'm trying to make is I know the source material says that these characters don't really have any superpowers or anything, but I would have appreciated them taking some creative liberties with the superpowers thing. All of the evil X's that you fight have superpowers, and it sucks that none of my characters really don't. I would love to kick a guy so hard he sees the curvature of the earth. Sadly, that kind of attack is not really readily available in the game. They also do a really poor job of explaining the leveling and enhancement mechanic. Basically, just about anything you consume from shops, which are also not really explained and kind of blend into the background, gives you stats, which are permanent and help you keep pace with the rest of the game. I really hate all of this stuff, and making adjustments to all of it would have seemed obvious when playtesting the game, I think. There's also 7 playable characters in the complete edition of the game, in Scott himself, obviously, Kim Pine, Steven Stills, Ramona Flowers, Nega Scott, Knives Chow, and Scott's gay roommate Wallace. And they all play very similarly to each other, which just about wraps up my cons for the game. I wish each character felt very distinct from each other instead, but it's not happening. Anyways, let's talk about stuff I like instead. So, first of all, it's a franchise based on a graphic novel, which focuses primarily around bands and the shenanigans that these bands get into. So, you would expect that this game would have some good music. And while I was lukewarm on it at first, it grew on me, and it fits well with the game. So, in short, it's far more of a pro than a con at this point, and I will whistle and hum the music for a good amount of time after playing the game, so it can't be all bad, right? There is actually a little area you can unlock in the map where you can get a sound test in case you're absolutely in love with it. I'm not, but I'm glad it's there anyway. It's always nice to have more stuff in the game, even if it's just stuff like that. Next up is the fun level, which, when the game really gets rolling, is pretty good. I mean, it's not bad, it's not great, but it's not bad. Now, I maxed out the stats to all of the characters for maximum fun levels, so that's one thing, but you can get what the game calls being in the zone, with air quotes, which makes your character blink in yellow, move faster, and unlocks a rapid jab move if you just keep like mashing the same button over and over again, as long as they don't block your attack or your initial first couple of attacks. This state activates when you beat 5 enemies in a row without taking damage. Drinking coffee, energy drinks, and other such things from shops will also unlock this effect. It's temporary, of course, but if the game wouldn't stop you, you can absolutely blitz through a level with no issues at Mach speed. It's pretty crazy. In short, I don't hate this game. That's not what's happening here. I just dislike a lot of things. Like many games though, the bosses, or rather the evil X's, are the most exciting and visually appealing part of the game. The bosses have a tendency to abuse the game's mechanics a little bit, but it's not as bad as it seems. And the bosses can usually be stun locked to death if you get them in just the right spots and just keep going ham on them. So I think that balances out anything they can do that can be deemed as BS. Most of them have a cinematic feel, even for a pixel art game, and I can usually compare all the fights to what happened in the movie for a point of reference. So all of these can help make the situation more exciting, and again, for a pixel art game, it's actually hard to have a cinematic feel, even when you're like me and have never read the graphic novels. I'd also like to shout out whoever did the sprite work and was on sprite work duty for this game. There had to have been an incredible amount of hard work that goes into making all the unique sprites for the various animations in the game. So good on you for that. Just saying. Fantastic job. Alright, so now I can discuss how some of these bosses work, or are supposed to work, before I wrap this up. First Evil X is Matthew Patel, who has quote-unquote mystical powers. So, super vague. He has a basic combo that does a ton of damage if you have low defense, and just due to the sheer amount of times he hits you, and a short-range fireball. When his health reaches a certain health checkpoint, he'll be invincible until you beat his demon hipster chicks. He'll summon them again when he's on his last leg if you don't beat him too fast, but it's more annoying than anything, as you don't actually have to beat them to take him out at that point, so just finish him off and then you're good. The second is going to be Captain America himself, Lucas Lee. So normally he'll summon skater friends during the fight, or he'll get on a skateboard and run you over or just beat you over the head with it, but in this case he was defeated too fast, so he mostly just did nothing, which is fine. So moving on. The third is going to be Scott's ex and lead singer of the Clash of Demon Head, Captain Marvel herself, Envy Adams, and her drummer Lynette Guycott, whom I am completely unfamiliar with. The fight is more entertaining to watch than actually fight, as Envy and Lynette argue and bicker through the middle of the fight, and also they tag out for each other after these exchanges, which is kind of cool. But moving on. The third and a half, I guess, like the third, whatever, is kind of all grouped into one, but it's Todd Ingram. A pretty tough fight in his own right. He likes to block and counter a lot, lift you with his mind, telekinetically throw garbage everywhere, etc., etc., electrocute you, do whatever that giant, weird, crazy thing is that he does. I don't know. The vegan police will show up to stun him after you do that, so you can get some damage in afterwards. I wish that they fully shut him down like in the movie, like they come in the movie and they just take all of his powers away and then you can just kick his face off, but this will have to do. The fourth evil ex-boyfriend is Roxy Richter. Gender? Female. And she is a ninja. Much like you would expect if you watch the movie. Kinda makes sense, except they lean into that concept a lot harder in the game than in the movie. And for whatever reason, you fight her in Ramona's backyard, which is odd, but it is what it is. She's a pretty snappy fighter and skips some recovery animations to make her more difficult, but otherwise a pretty basic fight, as she likes to simply slash at you with a sword, and slashing with sword is the most basic thing you can do in really any entertainment medium. Anyway, the fifth and sixth are the Katyanagi Twins. I hope I said that right. This fight is not like it is in the movie, like at all in any way, shape, or form. If you don't count the giant robot you fight before the real fight begins, which then only begins after you do an annoying booby trap filled level, you could potentially deal 90% of the damage or even kill them altogether before they even get their official intro, which I find hilarious. But after them, you move on to the final evil X, which is Gideon Graves. At least 3 different times, actually. If you don't count the actual levels themselves and look at it as just the boss fights only, the first one has the setting from the movie, which is the Chaos Theater, and he's a big hulking idiot who uses like a power star from Mario to be invincible for a while, and meteors, for some reason, as his main attacks. All in all though, not too bad. Then, in his second fight, he sucks you into his weird chest crevice for what is most likely a fight with what he thinks of himself in his own mind, maybe? I don't know. It's a challenging fight on its own, but can be made relatively trivial when Scott unlocks and uses the power of love, which is a sword with crazy reach, more or less. It doesn't really have much else special outside of that. The boss looks gross, by the way, and was just a weird fucking idea by whoever came up with it. I don't understand people anymore, really, so we'll just move on past that. Okay, so the next and final encounter is the closest thing to the real Gideon you actually get to fight. He looks and fights much closer to how he fights in the movies, and much like Roxy, he has a very, very, very few recovery frame kind of deal that goes with him, and he skips certain frames now and again to make himself seem like some kind of badass. But we all know that he ain't shit. So, that is evidenced by, and there will be spoilers here, the fact that this is a robot all along, and the real Gideon gets on his knees and waits to die like Dr. Wily from Mega Man, then proceeds to get one-shotted. So, he really isn't that good at the end of the day, and once he's dead, that's the game. So, that just about wraps up the main points of the bosses that I'm trying to get at here. Okay, so to wrap this up, I'll just touch base on a few things I didn't really have time to mention earlier, and go from there. First off, there's the weird subspace doors that are mostly off the beaten path, but they take you to a drug-fueled, glitchy acid trip of a hallway that serves little other purpose than to make some extra Canadian legal tender, and to be an excuse as to why you're in Toronto 2 seconds ago, walked through a door, and came out somewhere in Halifax. Second off, Knives might be the best character there is due to one simple thing. Once you unlock one of her tech attacks, you can do this. That can break a lot of things in the game. I don't need footage of it to prove it to you, but believe me, it could be very broken. Use your imagination. Come on now. Speaking of Knives, you have a small chance of encountering her father on the overworld map, Mr. Chow. The sprite has a small chance to appear and can appear more than once per playthrough. As long as your character isn't maxed out or anything like that, though, he can be a very tough fight. He's quick and will absolutely whoop that ass. He likes to leave the screen altogether so that you can't hit him in order to do his own personal brand of Matrix Bushido stuff. He'll come in vertically and horizontally, but out of all the lines he leaves across the screen, he only comes down on one of them or across with one of them, which makes these moves not super threatening. If you manage to beat him, he will be randomly unlocked to use only for the character you beat him with as a summon in place of Knives. It's inconsistent, so he doesn't come out every time you use it, and don't always count on him specifically if you need him. He'll come in, do some slashes to some enemies, probably one-shot them, bow, and leave. Canonically, or in the graphic novel, he actually hunts Scott down for being a white guy and dating/breaking up with his daughter. Brutal and highly illegal, even in Canada. In the movie, he's only mentioned in passing when Knives says that her dad is much older than her mom, and that Scott is not too old for her in kind. Okay, so the fourth thing is that only 2 characters have projectiles, and Kim and Mega Scott. What is up with that? Why so limiting? I mean, this is bull. Kim sneezes on people for her projectile, which is gross. Try to give people her coronavirus and shit. And Mega Scott has an actual fireball that penetrates through enemies, making it the superior attack. I just think it's stupid that only 2 people have it is all. And finally, I'll end with the best thing in the game that most people don't know about and can be done if you assemble the Sexpa Bombs plus Ramona and all taunt at the same time. You can do a devastating band attack featuring the Yeti that beats the Katyanagi Twins dragon in the movie. It's awesome, but I wish it could be done in single player. In conclusion, this game is not bad at first. You're having a little bit of fun with it, and it's not much more than a humble distraction to have a little bit of fun, especially if you have up to 4 players, but even 2 players to play with a friend if you have any, which is coronavirus, and I'm not super popular in person, so not a ton of friends here coming over to play Scott Pilgrim with me. But if you have that, it could be a pretty good time. The fact that you could hit yourself with projectiles that you throw off the walls, the fact that you could hurt your friends and yourself with it, you stay down for too long, you get dogpiled, you don't have a lot of special moves or moves that you can clear the screen with. There's just too many things that I'm just not really a big fan of as far as the design goes. Now, the game's charming as all hell. If I were to rate it on charm, it's a 10 out of 5 for sure. But sadly, rating the game overall, which is not packed to the brim with content, with a very short campaign and not a lot else going on, The characters all play very similarly, so there's not much really I can do about all that. It is what it is. Like I said, I like it, and I like Scott Pilgrim as a franchise, but it's just wishing they could have done a bit more with the game. That being said, I have to give this game a rating of only 2 out of 5. But I'd still like to thank you for staying so sexy on the line. And with that, I have to go to a concert with The Clash at Demon Head. Catch you guys later.
Hello again.